Hi everybody, and welcome to Garden Style. So today I thought I would cover heat waves and what to do for your plants once they've been hit with a lot of heat. And as a lot of you probably already know, we had an unprecedented historical heat wave here in the Northwest just a couple of weeks ago. These are temperatures I have never seen before. Most of us haven't. I've lived here a little over 40 years, and never in my life have I ever seen 3 days worth of above 100 degree temps, let alone 110 degrees, which is where we ended up by the third day. But it was even hotter than that in parts of eastern Washington, as well as Oregon, Idaho, parts of Montana, and Canada. Canada saw some of the highest heat. I was just reading an article the other day about a little town that literally burnt to the ground. It got up to 125 degrees there, and things started catching on fire and just burnt down an entire town. And my heart goes out to those people in Canada. It's just some temps we have never seen before, and it kind of makes us question what's going on with our climate. Is this climate change? I don't know. Is this just some sort of historical event that happens once every 1,000 years? I don't know. I haven't been on this earth long enough to know those things. We'll leave that up to the experts because they're still investigating what just happened. And they don't clearly understand what just happened, except that we were trapped underneath this heat dome that sat above us for 3 to 4 days and did not move. The air wasn't moving. There were 2 days there where there wasn't even a breeze. It was just scorching hot. And most of us here in the Northwest, we don't have air conditioning because normally we don't need it. In the past, I've seen maybe a day where we've gotten up to 100 degrees. But really hot to us is 85 and above. That's called extremely warm here in the Northwest. And I know some of you are probably laughing at us out there, but we're not built for it here. And neither are our plants. And over the last couple of weeks, I've had all kinds of questions rolling in as to how to help our plants recover. I don't know if some of you have heard, but there are a lot of Oregon Christmas tree farmers who have suffered extensive damage to their Christmas trees. One side of them that was facing the southwest on that hottest day are completely brown and damaged. A lot of their new seedlings that they had in the ground are damaged. So even they are scratching their heads right now trying to figure out how they're going to recover. But I can guarantee you one thing, live trees and cut trees are going to be at a premium this Christmas. There aren't going to be a whole lot to go around, as Oregon and Washington, as well as parts of Canada, help supply a lot of folks with their cut trees. There are some folks out on the East Coast that grow them as well, but we supply a good portion of the West Coast, including the state of California, with their live Christmas trees. And there just aren't going to be a whole lot to go around this year as we try to recover from this unbelievable heat wave. So anyway, a lot of questions I'm getting have to do with trees that suffered some damage, evergreens, perennials, and I'm going to go over all of those with you as I can show you some damage I've incurred myself here in my own garden. But nothing that we can't recover from. Plants are replaceable and very adaptable, and I'm about to go over a lot of that with you in just a moment. Alrighty, so here's a tree that is showing some serious stress from the heat. And you can tell because the leaves start curling like that, and that's just their way of reacting to being extremely dry. They also turn a really dark green or grayish kind of color. And after working in a nursery like I have, you can spot a plant under stress a mile away. You just kind of get an eye for it. But what I'm doing now is I have put a hose underneath, and it's on a slow trickle. And it'll stay there probably for the next hour or so that we can make sure that this poor tree is getting some ample water. Just sprinkling or hand watering isn't going to cut it, especially when they're this stressed. So he's going to get a good soak, and he should come right back. But plants can be extremely adaptable after going through what we just experienced. And the idea is don't panic. You'll be amazed at how quickly they can come to. This guy was completely wilted, and I did a slow trickle on this tree, and he's already showing some life, and that was just from a few hours ago. But he's looking a lot better. This is a new flowering plum that I had installed. But that's about all you can do. We did a lot of preparation at the nursery ahead of time that first week before it hit. Luckily we had plenty of time and notice to get ready and prepare. But we watered for 3-4 days straight, just getting everything hydrated. We came in really early, and we were there until the last minute on the hottest day. But you know, as humans, there's only so much we can take. So we ended up having to close early, 2 or 3 days in a row there, just because we couldn't take the heat. There is no air conditioning in our building. We were just surviving off of fans. So we would come in really early and start watering and just get everything as hydrated as possible. So I'm kind of slowly walking through the perennial beds here as I talk to you, just to show you kind of sort of what's going on. But most of the perennials here are full sun perennials, and they didn't even flinch. They didn't even blink an eye at that hot weather, because I did a good job keeping them hydrated ahead of time. But sometimes there's only so much you can do, and you start to incur quite a bit of damage. So over here I have a wheelbarrow load full of hosta leaves, and I'll explain to you here what the heck is going on. Okay, so here's a perfect example of what happens to hostas after a major heat wave. Unprecedented heat wave, that something we have never seen before. So what do? Well, with a certain plant like this, that's perennial, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to cut back all the leaves that show desiccation, or burnt leaves, basically, is a layman's term. And you can see I have 2 or 3 large hostas here that suffered greatly. This one suffered the most, as over the roof line here, as you can see, that sun just peeked over just enough on that hottest day to singe his leaves. Usually they don't see any more than a couple hours of sunlight here and it dives. But it was so hot that day that they suffered greatly. So I'll show you what this plant looks like after I get done trimming it. And we're early enough in the season right now to where he's got enough new leaves down underneath that are perfectly okay. So by cutting off some of the burnt leaves off the top here, we'll uncover what's underneath, and it's still early enough yet to where he should recover. So here we go. Alright, so here's that same hosta after I have cut off all the leaves that were damaged. And honestly, he doesn't look too bad. But there's a lot of new leaves down there in the middle that will start to come up now. And by cutting off all those leaves that were singed, this helps this plant put more of its energy into the leaves that are still there. I did leave some of the blooms on there. I probably should have cut some of them off, as it will just help that plant put more energy into its leaves. But he's been here a while, and he's very well established, and I'm really not too worried. I think he'll be fine. And I'll be cutting these flowers off in the next week or so anyway, as they start to die off and get yucky. But the one next to it looks a lot better, and you're going to notice that I didn't cut every single leaf off that showed damage, just because what's left there can still photosynthesize and put energy back into the plant. And let's face it, poor things have been through enough shock already that I didn't need to continue adding more to its problem. Same with this one. I still have some leaves here that are not perfect, but they can still photosynthesize. I cut quite a bit off of him, and his leaves are huge. But again, he's got some new growth underneath there, and he'll more than make up for it, as these are monsters to begin with. Same with the one next door. But yeah, when you're talking 110 degrees, which is what it got up to, we have never seen temperatures like that here in the Northwest. It causes damage. Now here's another example of desiccation. So all these hydrangeas here are in the shade. None of them got the direct sun. However, you notice the little spots on them there? This happens when they are unable to take up enough moisture to make up for the heat that they're experiencing. So some of the cells in the leaves start to die off, like you see here. And I'm not going to worry about it. There's still plenty of leaf there for photosynthesizing, not to mention these hydrangeas are starting to form buds. They're getting ready to bloom. But yeah, just some edges here and there as they suffered from the heat. And I made darn sure a few days before all this hit that I came in here and I really watered them, and I think that really helped to lessen the amount of damage that you see here on the leaves. But even so, 100 degree heat, you know, hydrangeas, they like a lot of water to begin with, thus the name Hydra in hydrangeas. But they actually fared pretty well. I've seen some a lot worse on some of our potted plants at the nursery because they were just not able to take up water fast enough to make up for the unprecedented heat wave that we experienced here in the Northwest. So I am going to show you some conifers because I'm sure some of you will have questions as to what to do with your conifers that also suffered some damage, and some evergreens like rhododendrons. So let's go over there and take a look. So here's a beautiful rhododendron. He's probably 8-9 feet tall, and you can see what happened to some of the leaves. And I've seen rhodies along the side of the road in people's neighborhoods where the entire plant looks like this. Never seen this before. But again, I went through and hydrated these plants to the best of my ability because we definitely had a little over a week's notice that this heat wave was coming. And that's all you can do is try and prepare ahead of time as much as possible and prepare your plants as well as yourself for some potential damage when you get heat like that. But I'm going to back up here so you can just get an idea of the size of this guy. And he's done blooming, obviously. But he'll be okay. And I know your first inclination is to want to go in there and start trimming and cutting on them. But honestly, give them a break. They've been through enough. Give them at least 3 or 4 weeks to recuperate, and of course continue to keep watering them and get them as hydrated as possible after a heat wave like this. And honestly, I'm not going to do anything with this one because it's not too bad, and they'll end up eventually dropping those leaves to begin with. I really don't want to start trimming on him until next spring when he's done blooming, because he is going to need it anyway. A little bit of trimming there. But overall, he's okay. He's not too bad. I've seen some in the neighborhood that are just burnt to a crisp, absolute crisp. Here's another example here. But you can see it's right on top where the sun just hit all the leaves directly and just burnt them. They just could not handle the high heat. So there's one example, and just leave it alone. Don't do anything to it just yet. And now I'll show you a conifer. So here's a perfect example of an Arborvitae. This happens to be one that I just put in about a month ago, and you can see that his tips are all singed. It also didn't help that he was up against a wall here, which just increases the heat. But not a thing you can do. Not going to do anything to him. Your first inclination is to want to go in there and start trimming. Just leave it alone. He will drop this growth that got singed, and they will more than make up for it. So just step back, leave them alone. Trimming them isn't going to do a whole lot of good for him right now anyway, except create more shock. And he'll just have to look a little scorched until next spring. And it'll be really interesting to see how much they make up for it. But plants are very adaptable. Once they come out with that new growth will actually be even tougher than the growth they had on them after a heat wave like that. And they'll actually put an extra layer into their leaves, so to speak, especially when it comes to conifers, than what they had before, just in case we see something like that again. And oh my God, hopefully not. We'll never see anything like that again. That's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime event. Climate change, whatever you want to call it, whatever it may be, it is not something I ever want to experience again. Let me show you another phenomenon I've noticed. So what I'm showing you here is a pile of yellow-green needles that have fallen out of the fir trees. And I woke up this morning and came out. We had some wind yesterday, 25, 30 mile an hour winds. And I came out this morning and the driveway was coated in all these needles. And usually they're brown, kind of like those needles right there. But these are a light green yellow, which just tells me that even our native plants suffered some serious stress during this heat wave that we just had. And they are dropping their needles and dropping them fast. And that's what plants will do just to lessen the stress on themselves. They're very, very dry. Everything is really dry now since this heat wave. And of course, this is the time of the year where we don't see any rain. Not anything measurable anyway, at least until October. So it's really important now that we stay on top of the watering and keep things as hydrated as possible. Because that is what increases the fire danger, and that's what we're all really afraid of now, going into the summer. So just wanted to show you that little phenomenon and how plants react to heat, severe heat. First day it was 100 degrees, the second day it was 104, and then of course the third day was the kicker, and that one was 110, at least where I live. It was 115, 116 down in Oregon and in eastern Washington. Temperatures we have never seen before. Okay. So the recovery's okay. I think these guys will be just fine. But most of your plants, don't know if you've noticed, like in the early spring, you have nice cool temperatures. You got pretty well established plants. And you come out on a day where it turns 80 for the first time, and you see all your plants starting to wilt, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my God, I just watered all these plants, why are they doing this? Well, that's called transpiration. And what's happening is they can't get the water up into their leaves fast enough based on the heat. It also means that they haven't had an opportunity to adapt yet. Goes from 70 degrees one day to 85, 90 the next day, and you start to notice that. And then as soon as the sun goes down and things cool off a little bit, they spring back to life. And you're thinking to yourself, what the heck? Well, it's transpiration, is all that is. They can't sweat like we do as humans, so that's their reaction to sudden heat. Well, we not only got sudden heat, we got blasted. And none of these plants were used to it. And trust me, all of them looked a little sad during the day, but as you can see, they're all recovered. And they look fantastic. And I've been through and I've watered them several times now afterwards. And that's the best thing you can do after a heat wave like that, is just get everything as hydrated as possible afterwards. But, as you saw with the hostas, sometimes it just can't be helped. They're going to burn anyway, no matter what. But, as you can see, I have quite the pile of hosta leaves that I just cut off. And they look fine. They'll be just fine. They're well watered. They're still happy. And I'm happy, because now it looks better. They don't look so ugly as they did before. And went through and I started cutting back a rose bush. Needless to say, it was in full-on bloom, and all the blooms were wrecked. Same thing at the nursery. Went through that as well. So as you can see, this poor little bush, I cut it way back, cut off all the blooms, and gave it a new start. Now the worst thing you can do after a heat wave like that is cut your plants all the way back. They've been through enough shock as it is. Just take it easy on them. Just trim off what absolutely needs to get trimmed. As you can see on the hydrangea here, I still have some singed leaves, but I'm not going to touch them. I'm just going to leave them alone. The plants will take care of themselves. But you'll see here, just the tips here, and it just could not get the water to the ends of the leaves fast enough based on the heat. That's okay. There's still plenty of green there. It'll photosynthesize and keep adding energy to the plant. And needless to say, this is the time of the year where the hydrangeas start to bloom. And they're already forming their buds and getting ready to do just that. This hosta actually looks pretty good. He didn't suffer anything. He's okay, and he's huge. So just keep that in mind, and don't fertilize your plants, whatever you do after they have suffered from the heat that way. That just adds to their stress. Best thing to do is basically let them do the work and let them adapt. Japanese maple looked pretty good too. He's still okay. So yeah, don't fertilize, just get them hydrated. Trim off just the very leaves that absolutely need it, especially on your perennials. But when it comes to conifers that have been singed, not a whole lot you can do. Just wait until they've dropped their needles. And if you feel it necessary to cut off some of the dead ends at the end of the year or by next spring, then by all means do so. But for the most part, plants are adaptable. They will come back, unless of course they just dry it out completely. That's quite possible, especially in heat like that. Now let me show you something else. So up here, I have an apple tree. This is a new Cosmic Crisp that I just put in last year. Look at all the apples on it. As you can see, it suffered a little bit of heat damage. You can see on the apples here where they just got scalded. See that? It's just from the heat, but for the most part, most of them look pretty good. But I noticed a day or two after the heat wave, it dropped a ton of the tiny little apples that were on there. And that's what plants will do. They will start dropping their apples. Tomato plants will drop their tomatoes. And that's their way of saying, yep, nope, can't support you right now. We're doing our best to stay alive. Those are my tomato plants there. I planted them late, so they're just now starting to put some growth on. But they're okay. They hung on. They did all right. And these are heat lovers anyway. Tomatoes love the heat. But I made sure they were well hydrated before this heat wave hit, and they did okay. But I have seen on some of the plants that they'll drop their flowers, they'll drop their fruit, they'll do anything they can to relieve the stress. And that's okay. As long as they're still alive, they'll be all right. So, there you go. There are some tips for you on what to do with your plants to help them recover. Best thing to do is just keep them as hydrated as possible. Do some light trimming if you feel it necessary for your perennials, especially. Conifers and evergreens, you're probably best to just leave them alone. Let them drop the leaves on their own. And whatever you do, don't fertilize them. I know you have an inkling to. And we're getting about to that time of the year, by the time we get to the end of July, where fertilizing needs to get cut back anyway. And that just kind of sends a signal to the plants. It's just about time to get ready for dormancy. I know, I can't believe I'm saying that already. So anyway, I hope this helps. And of course, any other questions you may have, by all means, leave them in the description box down below. Look at this. I am going to have a bumper crop of blueberries. Isn't that awesome? Oh, love this time of the year. Now, the ticket is to get to them before the birds do. May have to pull out the bird netting. Anyway, hope you gathered some more information regarding heat stress on your plants. And of course, any questions, comments, just leave those in the description box down below. Of course, if you want some more updates, a lot more is coming out. I've got a little time off, so I'm going to be dishing out a bunch of videos over the next few days. And, you know, let me know. Any subjects you want me to cover, any questions you might have, by all means, get a hold of me and let me know. Hope you guys are having a fantastic summer, and stay cool out there. We'll talk soon. Bye for now.